Hello, and welcome to the Albright Scholar for March 2021. My name is John Pankratz, and each month it's my privilege to welcome BCTV viewers and residents of Greater Reading to take a glimpse inside our learning community up on North 13th Street, to look at the work being done by students and teachers, and to think about its impact on all of us. Well, as you can see, we're at a year anniversary. The first Zoom edition of the Albright Scholar happened in March 2020, and we've been going for the last 12 months in this safe and virtual form. And to help me reflect on the past year, our experience with COVID at Albright College, are three wonderful colleagues and great experts on this topic. Dr. Josh Williamson, Dr. Adam Hershberger, and Dr. Irene Langren. Dr. Williamson, you're what my daughter would call the real doctor in this quartet. You're a medical doctor and the college physician and director of the Gable Health Center. Adam, you're a professor of microbiology and immunology and vaccinology as well. And Irene Langren, you're a professor of political science, international relations, and public health. So three people who could not be better placed to talk about the pandemic itself and Albright's response to it. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, Adam and Josh, I know you have you're not strangers to the small square screen, because you've been providing a wonderful community service in having conversations on COVID, really since this began early last year, right?
Yes, I have to definitely give Adam all the credit, although he'll spread credit elsewhere, as he always does. But Adam reached out to me and made the offer and really put the whole thing together. And I can just say it's been an absolute joy doing that with him. He's an excellent teacher. He goes through each of our topics very well and does a great job with it. And I'll just say thank you to him for that right away here.
Well, thank you, Josh, for the kind words. And I, of course, will pass on thanks to Karen Campbell, our provost, who originally hatched the idea. Just looking at the people that were already on campus and, experts, right, sort of locally in the community who might be able to lend a hand and lend some expertise. And so she reached out based on my experience as a virologist to potentially put together a series of podcasts or videocasts, whatever we want to call them. And so, the format was initially sort of thought of as perhaps a one-on-one thing, perhaps a conversation. I kind of like the conversation piece. And so, of course, you need to have at least one other person around, have a conversation. I didn't want to just talk to myself. So I thought that.
But we all do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Yeah, exactly. So I invited Josh to get kind of a medical side of things instead of just a purely, sort of bench scientist and sort of academic angle. So I'm glad that he accepted. And then we've had guests as well, because we have the benefit of being a small liberal arts community of wide range of expertise. And so Irene has been on to offer some insights in public health, and that was great. And just we had some other folks talk about mental health aspect, talk about prior pandemics, meaning 1918 flu, and we've had a range of topics. So it's been fun to do and to try to inform the community a little bit, right? So it's unclear when you do these things who views, who listens. I do get some emails from time to time, and so, but and from my perspective, even if 5 people, 10 people listened, it's still helping educate somebody from the community.
Yeah, I've watched most of the episodes and I found them very, very engaging. I'm not sure whether Governor Abbott of Texas has viewed any yet, but I'd recommend them, because it's not only addressing what we all hear about coronavirus, but also gives some deep scientific background and insight into medical practice as well. So it contextualizes it very well. Public health communication is not easy. And that's one of the lessons that we've learned in the last year, that how do you speak effectively so that people understand what they can do, what they should do, what will benefit the community at large. Is there anything that you conveyed on your 14 or 15 episodes of the program that you were wrong about? Any predictions that you made, or any insights that now you're second guessing, or did you get it sort of spot on?
Josh, I don't know. Is anything coming to mind?
I don't know. I'm sure I said last summer that hopefully this would fade out before the
Sure.
fall.
Oh, okay. You're being hopeful.
I'm
and
sure
optimistic. Yeah.
I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Adam, how about you?
Not top of my head. I mean, when it comes to mitigation efforts, like wearing a mask, like that's proven to be effective, especially I guess if worn properly. The vaccines, we try to keep updates on that. Those have panned out. Luckily, those have been found to be effective. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's been sort of a wrong prediction or advice. So we've tried to stick to the science, and to sort of as much as possible what we're seeing and what we're reading, that's sort of more evidence-based, like common sense type information and measures. So not that we need to be right or have to be right, but I think we've turned out to be mostly correct.
I think you have too, and I've really appreciated the level-headedness and the deep information that you've been able to pass on. Now, Irene, I know that you're part of a pandemic council at Albright, and that has a fairly broad membership, doesn't it?
It does. The Pandemic Task Force has about 24 members. And what's really interesting about the task force is these are people from all across campus. So we have people from the athletics department, we have people from student life, from academic affairs, from public safety, from dining services. I could go on. And perhaps most importantly, we always have student representatives. And that was something that was added to the task force as this pandemic started. And I think it's been a really important addition because we need to hear those student voices. We need to get their input because so much of what happens on campus is really resting on our students and being able to find creative ways to maintain a safe campus community. So the Pandemic Task Force has been, broadly representative, I think, of groups across campus, facilities as well, I would add, as well as the health services. The other thing I would say is I have been really impressed by this group because the group started meeting, I believe, in January, and then I joined in March. I went to one in-person meeting and that was it. All the rest have been on Zoom.
Yep.
So what's interesting is I've been meeting with these people 1 to 2 times a week, and sometimes more, because there are a lot of subcommittees that we find a task that we need to address. So I mean, it might be a minimum of 1 meeting a week, but it could be 2 or 3 or 4 with subcommittees added on. And these are people who met all summer long and who sit and meet every week. So it's a good group. It's a dedicated group, and the issues that they're looking at are not easy ones.
Oh, I think when you think about it, when you think about a pandemic and you think about what a college does and how a college normally operates, it could have been an absolute disaster. I mean, it could have been a mortal threat to our mission and to our work. How do you teach students if you can't keep students safe? And so I think so much careful, focused thought has gone into finding a response and to allow us to continue with our mission, continue educating students, keep the college open, keep people employed as well, which has been a remarkable accomplishment, I think. And keep people's spirits up as well. My sense, I don't get to see, I see my students, and half of them in person and half of them in these little rectangles. But my sense is that the college has done pretty well. We'll knock on wood. But so far, I think it's been a very rational response. And I think by and large, our students have tried to be as careful as they can. Now, Josh, I know that you've been working with some of our student athletes, and you know, I certainly have to feel for them. Many of them have certainly last spring had their seasons ended, and you know, in their senior year, they don't have that fulfillment of the final game and that sort of thing, and the seasons this year have been maimed as well, and necessarily so. But you're working to make it possible for them to practice safely and compete safely in some cases as well, right?
Yes, the NCAA came out with guidance at the end of last semester for winter sports, and as well as spring sports, and then fall sports as well that may be played in the spring. So that was that information came out and was revised a few times, and then it was up to each conference as to whether or not they would endorse a season. So different conferences have gone different ways depending on location and resources, and you know, as Irene was talking about our task force, that's the thing that strikes me the most, is that every topic just, you know, it affects every facet of our lives. So when you want to talk about just one thing, but then it rolls into transportation and dining and housing and everything else. So our conference, the MAC conference, adopted guidelines. They've actually gone above and beyond what the NCAA has recommended for some of the sports, but it requires a lot of testing. So I get to see the athletes 3 times a week, and we do Carla Haynes, my medical assistant, and I do nasal swabs on whatever percentage of the team. Some teams, basketball, for example, is 100% of the team 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. The spring sports, so lacrosse, men's and women's lacrosse, baseball, softball, for Albright, they get tested. 50% of the team gets tested 3 times a week. And as the weeks progress, basketball only has a couple weeks left. As soon as they end, though, football will start. Assuming that some of these are not final decisions. The MAC conference has kind of made adjustments meeting by meeting to accommodate which schools want to opt in or opt out, and set schedules and everything else. So yes, I've been working with the athletes a lot, and it's been tough on them. It really has. You know, they're used to playing the way they've done it their whole lives, and now they have empty stands, except for you, John, with the camera, and some of the cardboard cutouts that we have in our gym. And they're wearing their masks to follow along with our campus policy. So that's been a major change for them as well, and they've made a lot of tough sacrifices. And sometimes, I'm sure many of them question, if it's better or not, to compete. And I'm sure that for most, I'm sure it is better. The mental health side of things is so important, but for some, it may just add to some of it, to some of the mental health difficulties as well. So it can go either way, but I do think for the most part, it's very beneficial for most of our athletes.
Yes. I've just thought of a slogan that you can use since you're doing all the nasal swabs. Josh knows noses, because you're going to know that part of every athlete on campus by the end of this. Teachers and students are doing different kinds of accommodations in the classroom. Adam, I think last fall, before your sabbatical, you were teaching right in the lab, right?
Right. It's partially the nature of the department I'm in and, my subject, right? Lab-based science class, it's challenging to do over, remotely. You can envision maybe trying to retool everything, maybe using, I don't know, stuff at a grocery store, sort of like, Home Depot chemistry or something. But for what I do, especially involving some of the instruments, like just even something like a microscope, or
Mhm.
some of the instruments or some of the supplies that you just can't effectively learn the material and be trained for the next step. Like if you're going to go, whether it's nursing, medical doctor, this or that, like there's certain hands-on things that we try to teach our students. And so, I mean, it was a risk. I mean, I myself luckily didn't fall in an age group that was, particularly at risk of severe disease. I don't know of any comorbidities or, pre-existing conditions. So yeah, so I mean, I did it. Everything, went well, luckily. Everyone, when they're in the building, as I walked around Science Hall, everyone was following the rules and guidelines. That was, very refreshing to see. And yeah, so we were able to, basically, except for those last couple of days at the end of last semester, we were able to finish out strong. But yeah, so I mean, it was challenging, but we did it, we adapted, and we got through it. So yeah, so I was completely 100% in person.
Yeah. Well, I taught myself in-person classes, but there were a couple students who were at home. They were contributing to their family's childcare situation and sometimes elder care situations. And so they needed to be at home, and they asked me, would it be possible to have the class somehow available? And so what I did was set up my laptop within the lecture hall, and doing Zoom on the laptop and showing the screen and showing the class and showing myself, and in real time allowed them to be part of the class that way. And I think they've been grateful to that. But then once those students requested it, I realized that could be a pandemic measure as well. So that if
Mhm.
somebody needed to be isolated, or if somebody was not feeling well that particular morning, they could still Zoom in and be part of the class, but also keep the rest of us safe and keep themselves safe. Uh,
Well, if I could also just add, I'm very proud of our faculty, because many of us come to Albright because, we, frankly care a lot about the students, about their learning experience, and about that one-on-one interaction, all those things. And so I think we did really rise to the occasion, as a faculty. There's stories like that, John. I mean, Irene, I'm sure, has stories like that as well. I mean, I had students that had to be quarantined. And so, yeah, I had to accommodate them. We figured out a plan while they were out of the classroom, and we just made it work. But I wonder, at a much larger school where it's not quite so student focused, if they'd have quite that much attention and accommodation.
yeah,
Perhaps I don't know,
yeah,
but I'm proud of what Albright did.
I am too. I feel awfully good about this school, having gone through the last year. Irene, you've done a lot of teaching online this semester, and that's worked well for you.
It's been new. It's been a very steep learning curve. So I spent a lot of time in the latter part of last spring, over the summer, and
When you
even
were learning
in the fall.
Canvas as well as learning how to Zoom. Yes.
Exactly. But I would say also I took advantage of the college offering some courses through an outside organization where you can get certified really in certain areas of online teaching.
Mhm.
So I've been working on that as well, and I think faculty have gotten better at online teaching, and I also think the students have gotten a lot better at online learning, because you have to remember this is new for all of us. So it's not just teachers who have to learn this new way of teaching, but it's a new way of learning for our students as well. And I think there's been a lot of support, institutional support, for making that shift happen successfully. So I think the college has done a good job. And I think it's even given us some skills that will help us beyond the pandemic. It's been a learning experience that we can leave with some skills that we'll have in the future.
I think that's probably true. There will be no snow days in the future. Even when we're back to face, we'll have Zoom days, but no snow
Yeah.
days. Now, in addition to teaching during a pandemic. Irene, you've been teaching about pandemics as well, and you've been developing really a new major at Albright in public health, along with our colleague Hillary Aquino and others. I guess students are probably interested in the topic.
Yes, I would say, well, we've seen increased interest in public health majors and co-majors really across the country. I also work with an international organization, the Consortium of Universities for Global Health, and I just finished serving for a couple years on their undergraduate global health subcommittee, and we have seen with this a real interest in the topic. I remember we started the spring semester last year I was teaching global health with Jay Rajan, Professor Jay Rajan, and we were starting the course right in January talking about COVID-19, which really didn't even have a name then. So what we would do is on a, weekly basis, and then it became a bi-weekly basis for our class, we would give the update. How many cases, how many countries, looking at this. And I remember the day when I could walk into class and say, this new disease we have been studying actually has a name. So it's been interesting to look back at that. I still have my scribbles, my notes from when I was tracking the information and bringing it into class, right? As it, hot off the presses. And Professor Hillary Aquino and I are teaching a course on pandemics in the spring 2 session as well.
Both contemporary and historical, I imagine.
Yes, so she'll be doing the historical information, and my part of the course is really going to focus on using the work of futurists to consider how the current pandemic may change how we do things in the future.
That's right. And there's no question that pandemics in the past have literally shaped world history, right?
Yes,
the world
absolutely.
would not be what it is today if viruses and bacteria hadn't had their way with us. As they will, right? We're cohabiting this planet.
It's the eternal struggle between host and pathogen. Yes.
Yeah, I guess we could just practice resignation. We could become very Buddhist with this and say, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And at some point we do. Adam, Albright is sort of famous for training people in the health sciences. And you're probably in touch with some of your former undergrad students who've gone on either to medical school or to PhDs in biochemistry or biology. How are they doing?
I mean, as far as I can tell, just like us, we're, adapting and doing the best we can. But yeah, some of their learning was switched to remote, and, some of it had to still be in person, like, dissecting a cadaver, for example. You learn by doing. But in general, from what I've heard, people are doing pretty good. A few of my students that I've used to work with, like I'm going to vet school, go to medical school, graduate school, things have changed, but they're marching forward and they're still progressing in their program. It's just a different medium. So yeah, so luckily.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed is that because of their learning here and because of their interest in this in the subject, they become real master communicators for their own communities and for their families and stuff like that. On social media, I see many of them spreading good information and extra insight because after all, they learned about viruses in your classes right from an early age on. So it's good to see that developing confidence and expertise going forward. We're not out of the woods yet. And the weather promises to get into the 60s this week. Can Albright continue to hone to the campus compact and to stay safe? What do you think? I guess we have to, don't we?
We do, and so far, we've had a couple surprises. To be honest, we did return to campus testing, and we had a very low positivity rate. So that's an indicator that once again our students stepped up and did what they needed to do before they came to campus. So while we've had cases on campus again this semester, the numbers have been pretty low. And like I said, surprisingly, we did expect to have some more students picked up as asymptomatic carriers when they return to campus because we literally tested them in their cars before they got out of the car to be allowed to.
They made it home in their own family context and friend context, and so who knows what goes on there.
And we had a few positives, and the students, as well as the few that were in the car with their families, of course we're surprised, but we're very willing to do what we asked them to, which to help keep our campus safe. We started doing surveillance testing on the general student body as well as the athletes last week, so that started to roll along as well, and we've done the student athletes have done well, and they've been negative on their surveillance testing, and the surveillance testing with the student body went well our first round also with all negative tests. So they're doing what our students are doing a great job with their mitigation efforts. The big question is whether or not fatigue will set in again. And that's what we ran into before. We can only hope that there's enough vaccine out there in our general community so that our students that are working off campus as waitresses and clerks and the innumerable number of jobs that our students do off of campus to support themselves, that they're not picking up COVID in those places, because I think we generally are doing a very good job on campus. It's just we're not completely in a bubble, which would be, if we were, I think we would be in great shape. But since we're not, we do run the risk of having it come apart a little bit.
Right, bubbles are unrealistic. I know that in 1918, Bryn Mawr College, a little ways away from here, isolated completely. Literally, there were walls up around campus, and nobody went in or out. They left the milk bottles by the door or something, and that seemed to work for them. But I've been impressed as well by the seriousness of our students and how much they care about their own education and how much they care about each other as well. So that's been an encouraging thing. Any predictions for the fall? Will we all be back in classrooms, or partially back in classrooms, or?
I don't know, Irene, you want to start? You want to go around the horn here?
My best guess at this point, and of course we don't have a crystal ball, but I would anticipate that we will probably have more people back in classes, but we will still have the different types of classes. Some of our classes will still need to be online. I think we will still be seeing cases then. So I think it will be similar to what we're having now, although probably the in-person classes will be increased. That would be the one change I would predict.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the one thing we don't know is the social distancing going to stay the same or not, because you're right, Irene, if the distancing requirement is still in place, there actually needs to be, correct me if I'm wrong, there needs to be some hybrid or online, or else we just don't have the physical space to have everybody.
Right.
So if there's still distancing in place, you're right. Yeah, there's going to have to be a certain online component. But the recent, I think it was last week, the Biden administration came out with a statement, and they must be fairly confident because politicians don't typically set themselves up for failure when they make these proclamations, but they basically said that they anticipate every US adult could have a vaccine by June 1. And so they must be fairly confident in that. And so hopefully, most, if not all of our students who are 18 and older will elect to get that vaccine between now and then or into the summer months. And that will help, in my opinion, immensely to get us back to some sense of a normal in quotes,
Right.
sort of existence on campus in the fall. I think we'll still probably have to wear masks. I I will not miss those when those go away. Makes teaching more challenging among other things. But if that's what it takes to stay in person, then so be it. But we just don't have data right now to say whether or not someone that's been vaccinated can still be an asymptomatic carrier and transmit to somebody else.
No.
We just don't have the data yet. Maybe that data will come by the fall, but we don't have it yet. So we are on the side of caution.
Okay. And base our decisions on the science.
Yeah.
As well.
Josh, what do you think for the fall?
Well, I think I've talked to a lot of students that that actually are very comfortable with the online format, and I do think that that is going to be something that students are going to be looking more for. And so I think, as Albright's always doing, trying to provide what our students need and are looking for, I think that it's going to be something that there's just going to be a demand for.
So that will be part of the mix.
I think so, and I am going to make a prediction here. Once things are opened up, and and we are back to normal now, I guess the question: how long will COVID hang around in endemic form instead of epidemic form? Is remains to be seen. But a lot of people struggle with anxiety, and those numbers have been rising, and this is just going to accentuate that even more. So I'm very fearful when it is okay, for all of us to be out and about again. People with severe anxiety have a hard time. The longer they stay in, the harder it is to break out. And so I am going to make a prediction that we're going to have a giant hurdle helping people with anxiety and getting over the idea that you can go back out and you don't need to stay locked in anymore, because that's a major struggle for a lot of patients.
Yeah, I think we'll have to watch for that. These are all good thoughts. I really thank you for all your serious thinking about this challenge and all your hard work during the past year, and we'll stay courageous. Thank you for joining me today. And all of you, thank you for joining us on the Albright Scholar. We'll be with you in another episode in the month of April. So long.